It's a wicked idea. I
It
love
is
that.
such a good idea.
But
Um,
you're going to get, I think it might backfire. Is it Jevons paradox? I think. I can just see you're going to have, like, in another year, you're going to have like Japanese people with 20 chopsticks stuffed in their mouths or
right.
sucking on them like crazy,
Yeah.
salivating. And it's like, this has gone wrong.
Okay. So, non-tech news. Let's see what's going on. Did anyone have a hot one?
What is this Orange County thing for?
That's the Orange County Police Department. That's the OCPD. So, non-tech news. What did we have? We have, oh, here we go. New York Times. This is a doozy. This is a doozy. This is the biggest tech. This is the biggest story of the day. Fuck tech stories. This right here is the biggest story of the day, and everyone's gonna miss it. But you're not gonna miss it, are you? No, because you're one of the smart kids in the class. And it's New York Times, and it says China delays indefinitely the release of gross domestic product, the GDP, and other economic statistics. The unusual move comes as the country's ruling elite have gathered in Beijing for a twice in a decade national congress of the Communist Party. It's every 5 years they get together. And what do you know? They're not announcing, revealing, releasing the GDP data that is singularly the single most important number of the economy. How do you not release that? That's like a student going home and not revealing the grade they got, in for the semester, for the term at school. It's like that's the whole point of this whole song and dance. We need to know exactly how you're doing. And previously, China withheld its population data for 2 years until recently. And oh wow, what do you know? They didn't release it. They gave out the assumption that everything was fine and dandy. And then what do you know? After 2 years of not revealing it, they had to reveal it on the third because shit is tragically falling faster than any country ever has in history. So what do we think is can we conclude that when China decides not to release data, it's probably they're not doing that because the data is too good. Based on previous times when they didn't release key important data, the data was bad. And this again is the issue with authoritarian regimes when people can get literally murdered for revealing bad information, for being you're killing the messenger. And that's what the inevitable downfall of authoritarian regimes is usually exactly that. Putin knows damn well what I'm talking about right now. So that's the biggest story of the day. China is not releasing GDP data. What should you conclude from that? That their economy is collapsing as we speak. But again, no, that is the biggest story of today, and that I assure you, that's not the biggest tweet you're seeing in your Twitter thread today. Tell me if I'm wrong. Should be, because that has huge implications for everybody everywhere, potentially, almost certainly. So, when I go to the front page of the BBC, is there any mention of that? There's not. It's not listed on the front page of the BBC today. That's one of the big stories. The big stories on the BBC is Ukraine energy situation is critical after attacks. The capital, Kyiv, and other cities are targeted, and officials say rolling power cuts are possible. And Japan has said they're going to step up and help them solve their energy crisis needs. So there you go, Japan. I got to bust out the applausometer right there.
Going to
So,
attach some dynamos to some of them, their bullet trains, get some energy
right.
generated.
And Iranian climber says hijab fell off accidentally. And anyway, it's kind of a slow news day other than the big important one I just revealed that no one else is much discussing. I wonder if CNN covers it on the front page of CNN. Well, we're about to find out. Zelensky says 30% of Ukraine's power stations destroyed in over a week. Gee, I wonder who's targeting the power stations. I wonder why. Yeah, that's the name of the game. Teen protester flees Iran's brutal crackdown. Japan. Nope. No mention of the Chinese data. Let's see. The GDP. China, they do have it. If you scroll down quite a bit, about halfway down the page, it's there. China delays the release of GDP and other economic data without explanation. Oh, I think I know the explanation. I can hazard a guess what the explanation might be. And if this is at the party Congress, this is not like some random, one of those unimportant years. This is the important year every 5 years. China has abruptly delayed the publication of key economic data one day before its scheduled release. You're collapsing.
They didn't made the plan well enough. Because officially, President Xi is not elected as the next General Secretary of CCP because they were voted on after the 20th Congress. So that means on October 27th. Sorry, October 23rd. So they have to wait until this is done. That means our President Xi is still President Xi. Of course, it's we should say the position here is the chairman of CCP and the general secretary of CCP. So I think the official in charge of this is gonna be in trouble because he didn't claim the date and this date because the CCP 20th says CCP date is released very very late. So they didn't notice that. I believe it's overlapped.
So there's a quote here. It says, "My forecast is for another decline of 1.2% on a quarter basis for China GDP. This would mean China is in technical recession, and the delay would make sense, quote unquote, from an image management perspective. And China's GDP declined 2.6% in the second quarter. Here's another quote. Whenever the release occurs, we should all be prepared for some global financial market reaction if the world's two largest economies are both in recession this year." True that. So, by the way, just for context, China used to, when its GDP was double digit, by the way, would do a dog and pony show and a dance and in a pirouette every time they would announce their GDP quarterly data. They obsess about it. But now that it's negative, they won't even release it and not even give a reason for not releasing it and not even giving a date of when they will release it. There you go. So that's the biggest story
It's
today.
part. It's total zero during zero COVID.
So
I just put in the chat about a Russian state TV journalist that had to leave Russia. I've just put that in the chat. It was written by the Guardian. I don't know whether you spoke about that yesterday.
okay. So the chip has been removed by. Okay, I guess we could go into the tech stories. Are we ready for that? I'm ready for that. If you're ready, I'm ready. Here we go. Meta confirms it will divest itself of Giphy globally after the UK's CMA, Central Market Authority, gives a final order to sell the company following a court-ordered reassessment in July. So a UK court, the CMA, Central Markets Authority, the one who decides about, it's like the FTC, says we're worried about Facebook having a monopoly in fucking animated GIFs. This is truly stupid. This is really, really, really stupid. Meta acquiring Giphy has no implications of anybody having any kind of a monopoly on anything, including GIFs. There are dozens and dozens of competitors to Giphy. Meta already uses Giphy somewhat exclusively in its products. Acquiring them will do very little to anybody over anything. So why is the UK doing this, number one? Number two, Meta's, as a result, is just going to scrap the whole thing globally. So the Guardian version of the headline says, Facebook owner Meta to sell Giphy after UK watchdog confirms ruling. There's a bunch of tweets. Here's a tweet from the CMA. A review completed by an independent CMA panel has found the only way to address the significant impact the deal would have on competition is for Giphy to be sold to an approved buyer. My buddy,
But I've heard that gifts are going out of style anyway.
my buddy Andreas N., who was the original CTO at Spotify, who's now basically retired, says on Twitter, Meta is being forced to sell Giphy. Feeling grateful for competition authorities diligently preventing monopolies in animated GIFs. He's being very sarcastic. And for people wondering why Microsoft and Sony are battling so hard in the UK right now, and he's pointing to just how ridiculous the UK is being, essentially. Okay, anyway, it's a weird one. Top story today, so it's probably a slow news day. Microsoft announces layoffs across multiple divisions on October 17th. That was yesterday. According to sources, less than 1,000 jobs were cut across various levels, teams, blah, 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 blah. Next, from Protocol, Netflix rolls out a feature globally to let users transfer all their personalized viewing data to a new account ahead of a crackdown on account sharing in 2023. Right, because that shit's going to get really messy. Because whoever actually pays the bill is going to want to have their data saved and, preserved and maintainable and moved to a new email address and cut strings with that crazy account that you had shared to your whole neighborhood and everyone in your lunchroom. So they're going to have to offer that new kind of export feature. Next up, interviews with journalists at The Wire, who was, had that hot story about Meta. Sources at Meta and knowledgeable outside observers describe the messy fight between Meta and The Wire. The journalists behind the controversial series of stories tell us they haven't been hoaxed. We're not so sure. So the other journalists are now saying it looks like The Wire was hoaxed, which is what Meta said yesterday. And I told you there would be an update on this today, and that is the update today. And that story will keep going. It's a really interesting tech company versus tech journalist drama going on there. Next up, Carl Pei from Stockholm's new hardware company called Nothing will raise the price of its Ear One wireless earbuds from $99 to $149 on October 26th, citing an increase in costs. And he took to Twitter to say on October 26th, we'll be raising the price for the Ear One to $149 due to increase in cost. Engadget says internal docs at Amazon show a high attrition rate across all levels, costing $8 billion annually, and workers choose to leave twice as often as layoffs and firings occur. So a very high churn rate over at Amazon, which I would expect, actually. Next, from TechCrunch, Google adds new kids-focused features to Google TV, including parent-controlled watch lists and AI-powered suggestions. From CNBC, Salesforce stock is up 5% after activist investor Starboard reveals a significant stake. Shares of Salesforce have fallen more than 40% in 2022. Noah Smith, who has a tech blog called No Opinion, says he's done analysis on why the Biden administration's sweeping export controls on China's chip sector happened now and how they could usher in a new global economic paradigm. Welcome to the party, Noah Smith. We've only been talking about this for, 6 months over here at Tech News, and even predicted that it would happen to some extent, that the U.S. was going to sanction China in not so immediately direct ways as they've done Russia, but yeah, tighten the screws on them nonetheless. And no doubt we're well underway in that process. And so I'm looking at his blog, and he says, in a post back in August, I offered some thoughts on whether and how the U.S. could sanction China in the event of a conflict over Taiwan. My conclusions were about computer chips are essential for everything in the military, and although China is trying hard to ramp up domestic production, it has a long way to go. So I have to say that I was fairly surprised to see Biden go ahead and do just this without even threatening in advance or waiting to use it as a bargaining chip. The ban on the export to China of specialized chips used for AI, restrictions on exports of high-end semiconductor manufacturing equipment to China, making a new list of Chinese companies that can be quickly banned from buying various U.S. exports without a special license, etc. And so it's getting his attention, as it should. And he says what really matters is skilled engineers and advanced equipment. And yeah, Noah's a smart dude, and he's a, clearly intrigued by what this development, as am I, and I think most of us as people who follow the big geopolitical tech trends. This one's about as big as they get, and it's very interesting, and it will have huge implications potentially. Um, yeah, and that's what the next thing in this drama is. How is China going to reciprocate? Are they going to start banning drugs potentially, which would be weird because the U.S. actually designs most of the drugs, but they get manufactured in China. So if China starts withholding drugs, it could have severe impact on the U.S. But then we would very quickly, the drug companies would rush. And by the way, I'm suspecting, I have no idea because I know nothing about drugs, but I would assume that the big American drug companies and Western drug companies are thinking similar to how Apple's thinking about how they need to de-risk themselves from the fact that 80% of the drugs are manufactured in China. By the way, there was a juicy tweet that I saw, I believe yesterday, that there's some evidence, quote unquote, that China started hoarding face masks in the weeks leading up to COVID-19. Sounds very conspiracy theory, but if somebody can find the source on that, it seems rather reputable. Kind of interesting one. Anyway, Nikkei Japan says they have sources that Apple freezes its plans to use Chinese memory chips in its products, including in iPhones and whatever. Well, you're a day behind, but yes, we covered that yesterday. Wall Street Journal says they have sources that Intel, American chip company, is eyeing a significantly lower sub $20 billion valuation for the IPO of its Mobileye self-driving car unit. The information says they have sources that worried about a threat from Apple, Google doubles down on its own hardware and moves some staff from other teams to work on Google-branded devices. Apple's iPhone is stealing share from Samsung phones powered by Google's Android software. Next is a bunch of fundraising announcements. Apple restores Russia's largest social network and other apps 3 weeks after removing them, citing UK sanctions. The Wired says new research which details pro-Kremlin edits made to the English Wikipedia page for the Russian-Ukraine war could be used to create models to detect disinformation. Exactly right. They should watch how Wikipedia gets edited in this way and let the AIs learn those patterns of bad behavior. Financial Times says they've done research. Crowdsourced fact-checking can improve social media moderation by channeling partisan motivations to be productive if opposing sides police each other. Yeah, I agree with that. That in essence, that's how Wikipedia works. And why shouldn't social media work in a similar way, where you have um, crowdsourcing and teams and humans and who are willing to contribute in these ways? And there's lots of them. That was the big reveal of the Wikipedia, that there's actually people out there who are willing to commit a considerable amount of their hours on planet Earth to this project that they find value in contributing to. That the rest.
Although there are situations where I think it was a Chinese woman made up a bunch of history and started posting it online, and it
Super
actually
great.
took a while it took a while for experts to catch up. And kind of
Well,
on a lighter note, when I first met my father-in-law, he was telling me something about Wikipedia, and he was referencing an article. And by the time he was able to go to the other room and get the tablet, I was able to turn around, go on the Wikipedia page, and change the article. And then when he came and tried to show me, I was like, it doesn't say that. And obviously he knew that I changed it, but it got corrected very quickly. So it's a very robust and reliable thing. I remember when I was an undergrad, I would also mess around with some of the equations to see how they would, like the physics pages. So if you had a physics page for some equations like quantum mechanics or Schrodinger solutions, exotic things like that, if you made a little change, the response time to correcting things, like people were super vigilant about maintaining the truth in some of those domains. So that's kind of, I think it's gone from being something silly when I first started undergrad to nowadays, it's actually probably one of the best sources of information in some fields.
TikTok plans to raise the age requirement for hosting a live stream from 16 to 18 next month and let hosts limit their live streams to adult-only audiences. Oh, that's interesting. Sounds like TikTok wants to get into the porn game. So you can only use it if you're 18, and you can have adult-only audiences. Very interesting.
Tyler, maybe they're going after the OnlyFans audience.
Right. Dare, who's a tech journalist, says TikTok adding adult-only live streaming shows how much being a cam girl has gone from being seedy to mainstream occupation. Between Twitch and OnlyFans at both ends, it's clear there are millions to be made catering to this audience. Wall Street Journal is doing a profile of Google Chief Business Officer who leads sales for Google online advertising products and most of the company's other services. Who cares? CoinDesk says Texas's securities regulator is investigating crypto exchange FTX over allegations the company offers unregistered yield-bearing security products. Discord debuts something they call activities, which lets users share experiences like playing games and watching videos. And Parler agrees to be acquired by Kanye West to create an quote-unquote uncancelable ecosystem where all voices are welcome. There you go. That boy, record time. literally less than 30 minutes, and we just did the big boring headlines. I think that is a record. So that gives us more time for the tweets. Although one last one, Variety, which is a Hollywood publication, has the headline: more than 50% of non-professional U.S. creators now monetize their content. Adobe study finds. And it sheds new light on the creator economy, indicating that not only are a large number of people earning money from their original content creations, but also that their earnings power has grown. Overall, 77% of creators who monetize their content say they only started doing so within the past year. Other highlights from Adobe's creator study, there's 4 highlights. Number 1, 4 out of 10 of them are making more money now than they were 2 years ago. And of them, 8 in 10 anticipate earning even more in the next 2 years.
Well, Tyler, I am one of the other 6 in 10 who started monetizing my content on Substack, and I get $5.74 a month or something like that from it. So, yes, I've started monetizing my content. Yes, I'm part of the creator economy, but don't get too excited.
Okay, so check, here's a big one. Here's a doozy. And let me bust out the Jeopardy theme song here for this one. Here we go. Tech News Jeopardy. What percent of 16, 17, and 18-year-olds say they would prefer to start their own creative business rather than attend college?
Forty
60.
percent.
75.
82.
Correct answer is 49. Gen Z monetizers earn higher hourly rates despite spending similar amounts of time on creative activities, averaging $58 per hour for 11 hours of work per week, whereas overall monetizers average $51 per hour in earnings for the same amount of work. It says monetizers earn at least $43 per hour, 6 times the U.S. minimum wage of $7.25.
But how many hours do they work a week? You're saying 11 hours? Is that enough to live?
No, but they're not claiming they're trying to live on it. That's why it says
Okay.
they're non-professionals.
Okay, so they're just boasting that they are gig workers and yet they have enough money per hour, but they don't have enough money to do other things, I guess.
77%
What
of
am I doing wrong? Just kidding.
Yeah, but to Cheryl's point, they're not adults, right? They're 17 and 18-year-olds, did you say, Tyler?
Oh, that's what's
Oh,
wrong.
So they're living
yeah,
at their parents'
absolutely.
house, making more than their friends that are working in and out.
Dr.
It's
Francine,
not true, Dr. Francine.
if you dress yourself up as a 17-year-old, I predict you could go viral.
Hey, that is not true, Dr. Francine. There is an 80-year-old lady who took her own selfie in a very like funny way, like the comedian way. She garnered a lot of attention worldwide.
I think that's yeah. You need to find your
Right?
own
Yeah, very.
personality and
You just
share
have to
the
do something in your
yeah.
own way, right? You don't
Follow.
have to follow the young people. You just have to be interesting
Then
in your
there's
own way.
like a
Right.
grandpa, grandma, and
Yeah,
his
here's what I
grandchildren
want.
dress
I,
them up.
I
Yeah.
want Dr. Francine Hardaway to be the school undercover drug um,
Yeah,
person.
that's right. The person who goes into a high school.
Right.
Hall monitor.
Yeah, we call them narcs when I was growing up. But if you could do, create a persona, profile about, a senior citizen narc that at a high school, that would be truly hilarious. I would watch that without fail. So Anyway, interesting that that Variety is sharing all of this because Variety's Hollywood, and the future of Hollywood is content creators more and more. So there you go. On to the tweets. Did anyone have a tweet that they want to share since we met last time?
So I'm not sure if this is something that's actually happening, but the Boring Company is selling perfume now or some sort of fragrance. So I was curious if anyone could confirm
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Elon Musk tweeted himself, and it says smells like a soil. So it's like, I feel it's like a prank project, but it said it has already sold 12,000 bottles of that. But
Yeah,
it's
it's amazing fundraising.
so they like sold other like a flamethrower, a gun that shoot fire previously on boring sites as well. So
I know people that would buy a flamethrower. That's the difference.
I would buy one right now.
flamethrower for what use?
A friend of mine lit his fireworks on 4th of July using basically a flamethrower.
That's
Okay.
awesome. I think that's a very it's a unique approach to fundraising for a company or gaining some sort of traction because you engage with the fans. So I thought it was kind of a novel approach. But it's weird that it's cologne. So I was curious if anyone had any insights why it was cologne. Because at first I thought the cologne was supposed to smell like burned hair, and now it smells like what, BB?
Soya, earth, soya. Yeah, but I think because it's a boring company, so you could get puns there. So you try to make it less boring, maybe.
Okay, so it's a play
I'm
on.
sure they'll use it in homeopathy as well.
It's a spin on the words because the Boring Company really digs tunnels, and
Yeah,
it.
I know, but I mean
I
that's
mean,
why Elon made this name, right? It's the
he,
pun.
he would have named it Musk, but Musk Cologne was already taken like decades ago.
Oh, so the burnt hair is a better name.
He should have just called it Scorched Earth.
Oh well, there you go. That would have been a really catchy name for that. That's cool.
Okay, so here we
Tyler, how
go.
about this one? That Foxconn, they have a press conference today about they aim to uh, make the half of the EV in the world in how many years? In the following several years. But it's just like iPhone. They're gonna be the assembler and of course the designer of the main structure of the car EV, but not to make brand themselves. So that's a press conference today, released today.
Tesla cars for Tesla. Foxconn aims to supply nearly half the world's EVs. Taiwanese contract electronic group says it hopes one day to build Tesla cars for Tesla. Okay. YouTube ends experiment that required a premium subscription to play videos in 4K. Well, that was a very short-lived experiment.
Yeah, just within a week, right?
Yeah. Phil found this one from The Verge. AI-generated imagery is the new clip art as Microsoft adds Dolly to the Office suite. So you can do little text
That's
prompts.
a big deal. That might be huge actually, because now that's not some obscure reference or some beta program or something like that. So wow, that might be very problematic. I don't know if anyone here has been following that, but some artists are actually finding it very difficult because instead of somebody engaging with the artist, a company can say, "Hey, look, we like these five pieces from this artist. We'd like to make something else of that style. Dolly, can you make that?" So, to what extent is that going to erode the creative industry? I'm not sure, but I think it is concerning. So, hopefully, Microsoft has some safeguards for that.
Microsoft
Somebody,
back off when it's used to create all the fake accounts on LinkedIn. Imagine you use Dolly to create all the personas for a whole fake LinkedIn militia, and you just use everybody's dump data from all the breaches. Because I just was reading about one where it was like 4.3 million people's data in the latest collection from a breach. And not to mention, there was another exploit that came out from Apache that looked pretty bad. Just that time of the year, so we're going to have lots of fun.
So I just pinned a tweet of an image which is a hybrid of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates merged into one person. Have a look at the link that I just pinned at the top of the room. And is it not a perfect blend of Gates and Musk?
Just
And
looks like every British politician ever, at least in the Conservative Party.
he really does, actually. That's true. Um, but it's kind of brilliant in how it does equally balance Elon and Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg. Now, here's my question. In the same way, that what if somebody uses this character in a YouTube series or in a feature film? Would any of those four individuals be able to claim that that character looks like me? But more to the point, artists are already complaining that these AI image generators are impacting their ability to get client work because it does, it's able to accurately replicate their style. Now, how long before musicians say the exact same thing? How long before, I don't know, Mariah Carey and Britney Spears and everybody else in the Billboard 100 say, my fans are making their own songs that sound a little too much like me, just like it's AI song generators, just like the AI image generators based on an artist's style. What about an AI song generator based on an artist's style? So what you would do is, by the way, this gets surprisingly less challenging when you do it this way. If you analyze the songwriting chord changes of, let's say, Avicii, like somebody I know quite well, the chord changes are mappable. Blink 182 is so predictable. There's YouTube memes about it. I mean, Blink 182 songs are the same four chords over and over and over, and rather repetitious melodies on top of those same four chords. So people can make a Blink 182 song, and it will sound like a Blink 182 song. All you have to do is somewhat mimic the melody formula over the same four chord progression. You could also mimic reggae, or 12-bar blues is actually going to be incredibly simple because 12-bar blues is itself a preset pattern. And anyone who learns to plays guitar knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you could learn to solo like any guitar player on top of those 12-bar repetitious pattern, that chord progression. And in that way, it won't be that hard to say, make me a Blink 182 song. And it will sound quite convincingly like a Blink 182 song. Or, of course, there are other artists who are far more challenging. Stevie Wonder comes to mind. Stevie Wonder, that would be incredibly challenging to make a convincing, good Stevie Wonder song because he's just so dynamic. Radiohead comes to mind as well. They just have so much stylistically in their catalog that where Blink 182 never did that. It was the same song over and over and over. So anyway, there's a much more defined and definite pattern to play with, and a fewer number of chords to consider. It's like instead of chess, you're playing checkers. With Stevie Wonder, you're playing Go. With Radiohead, you're playing chess. With Blink 182, you're playing checkers on a checkerboard with like a 9 by 9 grid. Like it's a relatively small set of options that you have. It's more like tic tac toe in its simplicity. So some artists will be harder than others. Some will be much more simpler than others, and it's going to happen. And then you're going to have artists saying, "Hey, my fans are people are making songs that sound a lot like me. It's not me. Those aren't my songs. I didn't write those songs, but they sure sound like me." And it's going to be the AI song generators are,
Well, there was the band Axis of Awesome that wrote a song called Four Chords about 15 years ago. They're a comedic band, but you can find it on YouTube. But they basically played a bunch of excerpts from um, all the main sort of popular songs of nowadays, and
right,
showed you just how many of them use just the same four chords over and over again.
right.
It's really good. The other thing I was going to say, but haven't we seen AI sort of affecting specific industries already, like say translation? They can do a better job of translating things than conventional translators can, or even writing like articles. There are now, AI capable things that can produce written articles in a way better than other people can, or at least convert them from language to language better, which has put a lot of screenwriters, copywriters, and such out of business. So if you want to see how it could shift the industries, I think you should look there as an example, no?
Yeah. Okay, moving on with the tweets. Thomas Tong found one about Apple's mixed reality headset, and here's what you need to know. And they're claiming it's going to be $3,000. I think the big question is when they're going to finally announce the thing. It says sleek, light, high performance, and not easy on the pocket. Uh, Earlier this week, Meta rolled out its Quest Pro VR headset priced at $1,500 just in time for the holidays. And then the question is Apple going to, again, like they did last year, right before Black Friday, tease that they too have a hardware in the works to um, potentially persuade people to withhold their purchase of a Facebook, device. We'll see. Anyway, I've given up hope on holding out for Apple on this one. It's way overdue that they need to start leaking a bit of details. Um, it could fundamentally change the ecosystem, and maybe at this point they're waiting for Meta to implode because things seem to not be going the way Facebook had hoped with their VR ambitions.
It is funny to see how a product that has been unannounced creates so much fear in the industry. I mean, they've said nothing about it. And I mean, Mark Zuckerberg threw everything at this last product. I think they're desperate.
That's the general consensus of the last that meeting that they had last week. That Zuck
So,
seems a bit desperate.
so the rumor of Apple making something was more powerful than what Facebook actually made. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, considering how much money they're making, they could just sit back and watch, like Tyler said, watch Facebook implode and everybody else freaking out.
Okay, so the next one, I just retweeted that one. China's armed forces recruiting dozens of British ex-military pilots. All British former service personnel who have accepted jobs to train Chinese military pilots, quote unquote, are almost certainly enhancing China's military capability, knowledge and capability. And there's even some very choice words that I wonder if this article has it as well. Wow, that's appalling. What were they thinking? A retired senior Royal Air Force officer said, wow, that's appalling. What were they thinking? And it's because they're offering them £250,000 a year in salary to train Chinese pilots for the People's Liberation Army in what a defense analyst describes as a stunning breach of security.
Washington Post broke a story yesterday, I think, about retired four-star generals and admirals who are doing the exact same thing. So if they can do it, why can't low-level helicopter pilots and Air Force pilots do the same thing?
So here's a new quote. The Ministry of Defense said it was working to make it much harder for China to poach British military talent, saying, quote, "We are taking measures to dissuade current and former pilots from being recruited, and we want to avoid any perception by China that our previous silence on this matter is misinterpreted as our acceptance or approval of this activity." Yeah, well, this is exactly their playbook for what they did in tech with Ericsson and Nortel and any other industry they want to.
Lucent.
Uh, Lucent, yeah, exactly right. I mean, this is just how it works. You just go over and pay them more than uh, they should be getting and suck up that intellectual property. So that's a concerning one, by the way. The What else?
The 85-minute mining of the Bitcoin block, that was kind of surprising. So that's just something that I came across now. It's supposed to take 10 minutes. So when they adjusted the difficulty, I guess statistically it just took longer, but took longer than I think a lot of people expected, which left something like 13,000 transactions in backlogs. So yikes.
A new AI model can accurately predict human responses to novel drug compounds, significantly improves accuracy and robustness over state-of-the-art methods in predicting patient-specific drug responses purely from cell line compound screens. Well, that will be handy. And students broke the world record for the 0 to 60 mile per hour acceleration of an electric vehicle, and they got it down to 1.46 seconds. And Netflix trying to better understand how they. Ken found this one from the Wall Street Journal that Netflix is trying to better understand how late pandemic activities are affecting viewing habits. The CEO, Reed Hastings, called on staff to find ways to make subscribers visit the platform more frequently now that people aren't stuck to Netflix all day. Government scientists make breakthrough in recycling plastics that end up in landfills, demonstrating that chemical oxidation and biological funneling can work in tandem to recycle plastics and make recycling more efficient. Thank God for that. We can stop, if we fix that, we can stop demonizing plastic. That would be fantastic. But for the time being, let's limit plastic use. But wouldn't that be amazing if plastic was as recyclable as paper? What else?
Hey Tyler, they
Yes.
discovered some kind of a wax worm or something that actually has some kind of a puke or kidding or something that actually breaks down plastic. It was a pretty big development that I heard about. I'm sorry I can't tweet it to you.
No worries. Okay. Green is that the main? I think that's about
I'll
it
be,
for today.
I'll be the Debbie Downer here. Did everybody see the news that Boston University created a killer strand of COVID?
We spent about 30 minutes on that one yesterday.
See what
It's like,
happens when I do the work? I lose out.
yeah, it's 8 times more virulent, and it killed 8 out of the 10 mice. It's a hybrid of Omicron and the original Wuhan variant, and the Omicron variant doesn't kill mice in a lab. This new Omicron slash OG version kills 8 out of 10 mice and is far more virulent than Omicron, which is quite virulent. So if this thing ever leaves the lab, if I mean it's a big
Knock on wood. Knock on wood.
it's a big
But
stretch to think that humans will respond in the same way. But if
yeah, but
anything,
with that high mortality, that death rate, it's just like SARS. It just need to quarantine those guys if we can, figure out those guys, and if they, died, then the source of spread is cut. So that's why the COVID virus at the beginning is so was actually still with the transmitting rate and with low death rate. That's the best environment for virus. So I think the danger is if it's weaponized. It's not a natural way of evolution for a virus because they would die quickly because the host died quickly.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. So the natural selection, if it's kind of like that game, if you've played Plague Inc., even though they said not to kind of extrapolate too much from that game, the game does a pretty good job of modeling so that if you make a virus that's too powerful and kills people too quickly, it kind of just dies out on its own because you don't have enough time to spread. Although the problem here, I think, is it used to take millions of dollars to synthesize something like this, but now it's dropped a few orders of magnitude. So the kind of laboratories that are required to engage in this are on the orders of $100,000, $200,000, I think. So that's kind of the problem. Although the industry does regulate and has a lot of safety uh, measures and things like that. Although this really doesn't create that much, I guess, certainty or whatnot. So, yeah, and depending on who you ask and what you believe, whether or not it was a lab leak or wasn't a lab leak, natural evolution, studying these viruses is necessary. So hopefully we can just do it safely going forward.
Eric, you know what the scary part is? All it takes is a hacker to break in, steal the research, and then it's game over.
No, no. So the research, like I can tell you, like what I can read the sequence. That's not even a problem. Although most researchers put spelling mistakes in the sequences for that reason. So you basically have to do your own work in your own lab, and when you order these parts, you just say, "Hey, I want to go to Fisher, whatever. I want to order this sequence, that sequence." If you order the wrong collection or set of sequences, and your lab isn't authorized or on some like white list of sorts, they won't ship you the parts. You can't buy the parts. Although those safety measures are not always as robust as we'd like to believe, so. Yeah, if people want to learn more about that, I think there's a book by Arvind Gupta of IndieBio. He wrote about this extensively in his book, so I can put the link here on the side in a moment.
okay, well that's all I got for today. So we'll do it again tomorrow. And thank you to everybody for another Tech News Around the World.
Thank you.
Boom.
Thanks,
Ben
Ben.
has a room.
Rum.
Yeah, that's fast. Ben has a room like in 1 hour's time, so I'm going to pin it on top now. Please join him later if you want. Tyler, I'm exhausted. I'll let you know why later in the message.
Okay, here we
Yeah.
go.
Bye
See you
bye.
tomorrow.
Thanks
Have a
all.
great